Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the complexities of modern relationships and help you navigate the often confusing world of dating, especially for those of us who have lived through enough experiences to know better. I'm here today to talk about something that affects far too many women, particularly those who are mature enough to have been through relationships before, yet still find themselves caught off guard by the subtle signs that their current partner might not be as emotionally available as they seem. Before we dive into today's crucial topic, I want to ask you to do something that really helps our channel grow and reach more women who need to hear this message. If this video provides you with valuable insights, please hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that this content matters and helps us reach more women who might be in similar situations. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss our relationship advice and empowerment content. Also, if you find this information particularly helpful, consider supporting our channel with super thanks. It truly helps us continue creating content that makes a real difference in women's lives. And please share this video with any friends who might benefit from this information, because sometimes we all need that outside perspective to see what's right in front of us. Now let's talk about something that many of us have experienced, but rarely discuss openly. You've met someone who seems wonderful. He's attentive, charming, says all the right things, and appears to be exactly what you've been looking for. As a mature woman, you feel confident in your ability to read people and situations. You've been through enough relationships to know red flags when you see them, right? But there's something nagging at you, something you can't quite put your finger on. Little moments that make you wonder if he's truly present with you or if part of his heart is still somewhere else. Today, we're going to explore 7 critical signs that the man you're dating or in a relationship with is still emotionally attached to his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife. This isn't about being paranoid or overly suspicious. This is about protecting your emotional well-being and ensuring that you're investing your time and energy in someone who is genuinely available for a real, committed relationship with you. As older women, we bring wisdom, experience, and emotional maturity to our relationships. We deserve partners who can match that level of emotional availability and commitment. We shouldn't have to compete with ghosts from someone's past, and we certainly shouldn't have to settle for being someone's second choice or emotional placeholder while they work through unresolved feelings for someone else. Sign number 1, he compares you to his ex, whether positively or negatively. The first major sign that he's still emotionally connected to his ex is that he frequently brings her up in conversation, making comparisons between you and her. Now, this might seem obvious when the comparisons are negative, but here's what many women miss. Positive comparisons can be just as problematic as negative ones. When a man constantly tells you how much better you are than his ex, how you're nothing like her, or how grateful he is that you don't do the things she used to do, he's revealing that she's still very much on his mind. A man who has truly moved on doesn't need to define his current relationship in terms of his past one. He doesn't need to constantly reassure himself or you about how different and better things are now. Think about it this way: when you're truly over someone, they don't serve as your reference point for new experiences. You don't need to contrast every moment, every trait, and every behavior with what came before. An emotionally available man will appreciate you for who you are, not for who you're not. But the comparisons don't always sound like criticism of his ex. Sometimes they sound like praise for you. He might say things like, "My ex never would have understood my work schedule like you do," or "She was always so dramatic, but you're so calm and rational." While these might initially feel like compliments, they're actually red flags. They indicate that he's still processing his relationship with his ex through his relationship with you. Even more concerning are the subtle negative comparisons. These might be less obvious, disguised as observations or innocent comments. He might say something like, "My ex used to make this dish differently when you're cooking together," or "She had a completely different sense of style when you're getting dressed up for a date." These comments might seem harmless, but they reveal that he's constantly measuring your actions, choices, and characteristics against hers. The truly problematic comparisons are the ones that seem to favor his ex, even if he doesn't explicitly say so. He might talk about how his ex was really into fitness right after you've mentioned feeling tired after a workout. He might bring up how she was always up for adventures when you've expressed a preference for a quiet evening at home. These comparisons are his way of telling you, perhaps unconsciously, that you're not meeting standards that she set. A man who is emotionally available and ready for a new relationship doesn't need to reference his past relationship to understand or appreciate his current one. He's not constantly running comparisons in his head because he's fully present with you. He sees you as an individual, not as a replacement or improvement on a previous model. Pay attention to how often his ex comes up in conversation and notice the context. If he's constantly using her as a reference point, whether positively or negatively, it's a clear indication that he hasn't fully processed and moved beyond that relationship. You deserve to be with someone who sees you for who you are, not someone who sees you through the lens of who you're not. Sign number 2. He still has emotional reactions. When her name comes up, the second significant sign that he's still emotionally invested in his ex is the way he reacts when her name comes up in conversation, whether he brings her up or someone else does. This isn't about the content of what he says about her, but rather the emotional charge behind his words and the physical responses you can observe. A man who has truly moved on from his ex will be able to discuss her in a neutral, matter-of-fact way when the topic naturally arises. He won't have intense emotional reactions because he's processed those feelings and moved beyond them. But when a man is still emotionally connected, you'll notice distinct changes in his demeanor, voice, and body language whenever she's mentioned. Watch for signs of heightened emotion. Does his voice change when he talks about her? Does he speak faster, slower, or with a different tone? Does he become defensive, even when no one is criticizing her or their relationship? These vocal changes indicate that talking about her triggers something inside him that he hasn't fully resolved. Pay attention to his body language as well. Does he tense up? Does he avoid eye contact? Does he fidget with his hands or shift uncomfortably in his seat? Physical responses like these suggest that the mention of his ex creates anxiety, stress, or other strong emotions that he's trying to suppress or control. On the other end of the spectrum, notice if he becomes unusually animated or enthusiastic when talking about certain memories involving his ex. If his whole demeanor lights up when recounting stories about their travels together, their shared interests, or happy moments from their relationship, that's equally concerning. This kind of positive emotional charge indicates that he's still drawn to those memories and may be comparing them favorably to his current experiences. Sometimes the emotional reaction manifests as anger or bitterness that seems disproportionate to the situation. If someone casually mentions his ex or asks an innocent question about their relationship and he responds with intense negativity or seems to get genuinely upset, that's a sign that he's still processing hurt and resentment. A man who has moved on might acknowledge that the relationship didn't work out, but he won't have such strong negative reactions to simple mentions of his ex. Another red flag is if he becomes overly eager to change the subject whenever his ex is mentioned. While it's natural to not want to dwell on past relationships, someone who is truly over their ex won't feel the need to immediately redirect every conversation that touches on that topic. The urgency to change the subject often indicates discomfort with the emotions that arise when thinking about her. You might also notice that he becomes withdrawn or distant after conversations that involve his ex, even if the mention was brief or incidental. If he seems to shut down emotionally or becomes less present with you after she's been brought up, it suggests that thinking about her affects his ability to be fully engaged in your relationship. Watch for inconsistencies in his reactions as, well, he might be very calm and controlled when discussing practical matters related to his ex, like co-parenting arrangements or shared property, but become emotional when talking about more personal aspects of their relationship. This suggests that while he may have processed the logistical end of their relationship, he hasn't dealt with the emotional components. The key thing to remember is that emotional neutrality is the goal when someone has truly moved on from a past relationship. Strong emotions in either direction, whether positive or negative, indicate that there are still unresolved feelings present. You want to be with someone who can acknowledge their past without being emotionally hijacked by it. Sign number 3. He maintains unnecessary contact with his ex. The third critical sign that he's still emotionally attached to his ex is that he maintains contact with her beyond what's necessary for practical reasons. While there are legitimate circumstances that require ongoing communication between exes, such as co-parenting children or resolving shared financial obligations, there's a clear difference between necessary contact and emotional attachment disguised as practical communication. First, let's establish what constitutes necessary contact. If they share children, ongoing communication about custody schedules, school events, medical appointments, and other parenting matters is not only reasonable, but required. If they own property together, have shared debts, or are in the process of divorce proceedings, some level of contact is unavoidable. If they work in the same industry and occasionally need to interact professionally, that's also understandable. However, the red flags appear when the contact goes beyond these practical necessities or when the manner of communication suggests emotional intimacy rather than business-like coordination. Pay attention to the frequency, timing, and nature of their interactions. If he's texting her multiple times per week about trivial matters, that's a concern. If he's calling her for emotional support when he's stressed about work or family issues, that suggests he's still relying on her for emotional comfort. If he's sharing details about his daily life, his thoughts and feelings, or asking for her advice on personal matters unrelated to any shared responsibilities, he's maintaining an emotional connection that's inappropriate for someone in a new relationship. Notice if he feels the need to immediately respond to her messages, even when they're not urgent. A man who has moved on will handle necessary communications with his ex in a business-like manner, responding during appropriate hours and not dropping everything to address non-urgent matters. If he interrupts your time together to respond to her texts or seems anxious when he can't immediately reply to her messages, that indicates an emotional priority that should concern you. Be aware of the timing of their communications as well. If he's texting her late at night or early in the morning, that's inappropriate unless there's a genuine emergency. If he's reaching out to her on holidays, birthdays, or anniversaries of significant events in their relationship, he's maintaining emotional connections that should have been severed. Pay attention to how he speaks about their communication. Does he seem excited or energized after talking to her? Does he share details about their conversations with you? Or is he secretive about what they discuss? If he's open about necessary communications, but becomes vague or defensive when you ask about other interactions, that's a red flag. Watch for signs that he's seeking her approval or validation. If he tells her about his accomplishments, asks for her opinion on his decisions, or seems to value her input on matters that don't concern her, he's still emotionally dependent on her. A man who has moved on doesn't need his ex's approval or validation for his choices. Another concerning pattern is if he initiates contact with her during difficult times in your relationship. If you notice that he tends to reach out to her after you've had an argument or during periods when you're dealing with challenges together, he may be using her as an emotional escape or support system that should be reserved for you as his current partner. Social media interactions also fall into this category. If he's regularly liking, commenting on, or sharing her posts, that's maintaining a level of engagement that suggests ongoing emotional interest. If he's viewing her stories consistently or engaging with her content more than he engages with yours, that's particularly problematic. The bottom line is that a man who is emotionally available for a new relationship will naturally minimize contact with his ex to what's absolutely necessary. He'll handle required communications in a businesslike manner and won't seek out additional opportunities to connect with her. If he's maintaining more contact than practical circumstances require, or if his communications with her seem to have emotional undertones, it's a clear sign that he hasn't fully let go of that relationship. Sign number 4. He keeps mementos, photos, and reminders of their relationship. The fourth telling sign that he's still emotionally connected to his ex is that he keeps physical reminders of their relationship prominently displayed or easily accessible in his life. While it's normal to have some photos and mementos from past relationships stored away in boxes or old photo albums, actively maintaining visible reminders of an ex suggests an unwillingness to fully close that chapter of his life. Let's start with the most obvious indicators: photos. If he still has pictures of his ex displayed in his home, whether framed on shelves, stuck to his refrigerator, or prominently featured in photo albums that sit on coffee tables, that's a clear sign he's not ready to move forward. This is especially concerning if these photos show them together in romantic settings, at special events, or during intimate moments. But the photo issue goes beyond just what's displayed. Pay attention to his digital life as well. If his social media profiles still feature photos of them together, or if his phone's photo gallery is filled with pictures of her that he hasn't bothered to organize or archive, that suggests she still occupies mental and emotional space in his daily life. A man who has moved on will have taken the natural step of removing these constant visual reminders. Physical mementos are equally telling. These might include gifts she gave him that he still wears or uses regularly, such as jewelry, clothing, or accessories. If he's still wearing the watch she bought him for his birthday or using the wallet she gave him for Christmas, he's choosing to carry reminders of her with him every day. While these items might be practical or valuable, continuing to use them suggests an emotional attachment to the memories they represent. Look around his living space for other indicators. Does he still have love letters, cards, or notes from her? Are there souvenirs from trips they took together displayed on shelves? Does he keep flowers she gave him, even if they're dried or preserved? These items serve no practical purpose other than to maintain a connection to those shared experiences. Sometimes the mementos are less obvious but equally significant. He might keep books she recommended, CDs or playlists she made for him, or items that remind him of inside jokes they shared. If he still uses the coffee mug she bought him every morning or sleeps on sheets they picked out together, he's surrounding himself with constant reminders of their relationship. Pay attention to his reaction if you suggest redecorating or updating his space. A man who is ready to move forward will be excited about creating new memories and establishing a fresh environment with you. If he's resistant to changing things that are clearly connected to his ex, or if he becomes defensive about keeping certain items, that's a red flag. The bedroom is a particularly important space to observe. If he's still sleeping in the same bed he shared with his ex, using the same pillows, blankets, or bedroom decor they chose together, he's not creating space for new intimacy. While replacing a mattress might seem like a significant expense, a man who is serious about moving forward will want to create a space that belongs to his new relationship, not one that's haunted by memories of his ex. Technology also plays a role here. If his computer desktop background, phone wallpaper, or social media profile pictures still feature his ex or images from their relationship, he's choosing to see reminders of her multiple times every day. These digital spaces are part of his daily environment, and keeping her image in these places suggests she's still very much on his mind. Another subtle but important indicator is his reaction to acquiring new items that might replace things connected to his ex. If he's reluctant to buy new furniture, redecorate his space, or update his wardrobe because he's attached to items that have history with his previous relationship, he's prioritizing the past over the present. The key issue here is intentionality. While it's unrealistic to expect someone to throw away every item that has any connection to a past relationship, Actively choosing to keep visible reminders or regularly used items that are strongly connected to an ex indicates an unwillingness to fully commit to moving forward. A man who is emotionally available will naturally want to create new traditions, new memories, and new environments with his current partner, not cling to the artifacts of his previous relationship. Sign number 5. He brings her up in arguments or uses her to make points. The 5th significant sign that he's still emotionally invested in his ex is that he references her during disagreements with you, uses examples from their relationship to make points during arguments, or compares your conflict resolution styles to hers. This behavior reveals that she's still serving as a reference point for how he thinks relationships should work, and it indicates that he hasn't fully separated his past relationship from his current one. When couples argue, they should be focusing on resolving the specific issue at hand between the two people who are actually in the relationship. Bringing a third party into the discussion, especially an ex-partner, is both inappropriate and revealing. It shows that he's either using his ex as a weapon against you or as a standard by which he's measuring your behavior. One way this manifests is through favorable comparisons during heated moments. He might say things like, "My ex never got upset about things like this," or "She understood that sometimes I need space when I'm stressed." These statements are particularly damaging because they suggest that you're somehow failing to meet standards that she set, and they put you in the position of defending your legitimate feelings or needs against the ghost of someone who isn't even present. Sometimes the comparisons seem to favor you, but they're still problematic. He might say, "At least you don't throw things like she did," or "I'm so glad you're not as jealous as she was." While these might sound like compliments in the moment, they reveal that he's still processing your relationship through the lens of his previous one. He's not seeing your behavior as appropriate because it's healthy or reasonable. He's seeing it as acceptable because it's better than what he experienced before. Another concerning pattern is when he uses his ex's behavior to excuse his own actions or to deflect responsibility during arguments. He might say things like, "My ex always accused me of not listening too, so maybe the problem isn't me," or "She used to say I was selfish, but I think some people just have unrealistic expectations." This type of rhetoric shows that he's not taking accountability for his role in relationship problems and is instead hiding behind past conflicts. Pay attention to whether he brings up specific incidents from his previous relationship during your arguments. If he starts telling stories about fights they had or problems they faced when you're trying to resolve an issue between the two of you, he's avoiding dealing with the present situation. This behavior suggests that he's more comfortable discussing past relationship dynamics than engaging with current ones. Sometimes he might use his ex as a threat or ultimatum during disagreements. He might say things like, "My ex used to nag me about this same thing, and look how that turned out," implying that if you continue to express your concerns, your relationship will fail too. This is a manipulative tactic that uses the specter of his failed relationship to silence your legitimate complaints or needs. Watch for moments when he seems to be defending his ex's behavior during arguments with you. If you're discussing trust issues and he starts explaining why his ex had good reasons to be suspicious, or if you're talking about communication problems and he begins justifying her communication style, he's emotionally aligned with her perspective rather than yours. Another red flag is if he uses lessons learned from his previous relationship to shut down conversations with you. He might say, "I learned from my ex that it's better not to discuss certain topics," or "My last relationship taught me that some issues are better left alone." While it's good to learn from past experiences, using those lessons to avoid addressing legitimate concerns in your current relationship is problematic. Notice if he seems to get more defensive about his ex during arguments than he does about you. If you criticize something about his past relationship or mention that something his ex did was inappropriate, and he becomes more heated defending her than he does defending you when others criticize you, that's a clear sign of misplaced loyalty. The most telling indicator is if he threatens to contact his ex for advice or support during particularly difficult arguments with you. If he says things like, "Maybe I should talk to someone who actually understands me," or "At least I know someone who would listen to my side of this," he's essentially threatening to seek emotional comfort from his ex when things get tough with you. A man who is emotionally available and committed to your relationship will keep past relationships out of current conflicts. He'll address disagreements based on what's happening between the two of you, not use his ex as a reference point, weapon, or escape route. Arguments should be about resolving issues and strengthening your bond, not about relitigating old relationships or making you compete with someone who should be irrelevant to your current situation. Sign number 6. He becomes defensive when you express concerns about his ex. The sixth major indicator that he's still emotionally attached to his ex is his reaction when you express legitimate concerns about her presence or influence in your relationship. A man who has truly moved on will understand and validate your feelings about his past relationship, but someone who is still emotionally connected will become defensive, dismissive, or even angry when you bring up concerns about his ex. This defensiveness often manifests in several distinct ways. First, he might immediately dismiss your concerns as jealousy or insecurity, rather than acknowledging that your feelings might be based on legitimate observations. He might say things like, "You're just being jealous," or "You're insecure for no reason," which deflects from addressing the actual behaviors that are causing your concern. When you point out specific examples of concerning behavior related to his ex, he might minimize or rationalize these actions rather than acknowledging how they might affect you. For instance, if you mention that he texts with her frequently, he might say, "Oh, we're just friends now," or "It's no big deal." If you express discomfort with the photos he still has displayed, he might respond with, "They're just pictures," or "I forgot they were even there." A particularly telling response is when he accuses you of trying to control him or being unreasonable whenever you express concerns about his ex. He might frame your legitimate needs for emotional security as attempts to manipulate or restrict him. This type of response shows that he values his connection to his ex more than your emotional well-being and sees any threat to that connection as an attack on his freedom. Watch for signs that he becomes more protective of his ex than he is of you. If he defends her more vigorously than he defends your relationship, that's a clear indication of misplaced priorities. He might interrupt you when you're expressing concerns to correct details about her or to provide context that puts her in a better light. He might seem more concerned about protecting her reputation or feelings than addressing your legitimate worries. Another red flag is if he turns the conversation back on you whenever you bring up concerns about his ex. Instead of addressing your specific concerns, he might start pointing out your flaws or bringing up issues from your past relationships. This deflection tactic is designed to make you feel like you're the problem, rather than acknowledging that his behavior regarding his ex might be inappropriate. Pay attention to whether he seems to get angrier about discussions of his ex than about other relationship issues. If conversations about his ex consistently escalate into bigger arguments than discussions about other topics, it suggests that this is a particularly sensitive area for him. A man who has moved on should be able to discuss his past relationship calmly and understand why his current partner might have concerns. Sometimes the defensiveness is more subtle. He might not get angry, but he might become withdrawn, shut down emotionally, or give you the silent treatment after you express concerns about his ex. This type of emotional withdrawal is a form of punishment designed to discourage you from bringing up the topic again. It's a way of training you to avoid discussing something that makes him uncomfortable. Notice if he tries to make you feel guilty for having concerns about his ex. He might say things like, "I thought you trusted me," or "I can't believe you would think that about me." This guilt tripping is designed to make you feel bad for having legitimate concerns and to position him as the victim of your supposed paranoia or jealousy. A concerning pattern is if he refuses to make any changes or accommodations to address your concerns about his ex. When you're in a healthy relationship, partners should be willing to modify behaviors that make the other person feel insecure or uncomfortable, especially when those concerns are reasonable. If he's unwilling to reduce contact with his ex, remove photos, or make other reasonable adjustments to prioritize your relationship, it suggests that maintaining his connection to her is more important to him than your peace of mind. Watch for attempts to gaslight you about your observations. He might tell you that you're imagining things, that you're remembering conversations incorrectly, or that you're reading too much into innocent interactions. This type of response is designed to make you question your own perceptions and judgments, rather than addressing the actual issues you've identified. The most telling sign is if he threatens the relationship or gives you ultimatums when you express concerns about his ex. He might say things like, "If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together," or "I'm not going to change my whole life just because you're jealous." These responses show that he's more committed to maintaining his current dynamic with his ex than he is to building a secure relationship with you. A man who is emotionally available and committed to your relationship will listen to your concerns with empathy and understanding. He'll acknowledge that his behavior might be contributing to your discomfort and will be willing to make reasonable changes to help you feel more secure. He won't need to defend his ex because she won't be a significant presence in his current relationship. Sign number 7, he shows signs of unresolved grief or anger about the breakup. The seventh, and perhaps most subtle but telling sign that he's still emotionally attached to his ex, is that he displays ongoing grief, anger, or other intense emotions about their breakup. Even if he doesn't talk about her directly or engage in the more obvious behaviors we've discussed, unresolved emotional pain from the end of that relationship can manifest in ways that significantly impact his ability to be present and available in your relationship. Unresolved grief often appears as periods of unexplained sadness or melancholy, especially around dates that were significant in his previous relationship. He might become withdrawn or emotionally distant around their anniversary, her birthday, holidays they used to celebrate together, or the anniversary of their breakup. If he has mood changes that seem to follow these patterns, even if he doesn't explicitly connect them to his ex, it suggests that his emotional calendar is still tied to that relationship. Sometimes, this grief manifests as a general sense of loss or emptiness that he can't quite explain. He might talk about feeling like something is missing from his life, or express a vague sense of dissatisfaction that isn't related to anything specific in your relationship. This type of generalized sadness often indicates that he's still mourning the loss of his previous relationship, even if he's not consciously aware of it. On the other end of the emotional spectrum, unresolved anger about the breakup can be equally problematic. This might show up as bitter comments about relationships, in general cynicism about love or commitment, or anger that seems disproportionate to current situations. If he often makes comments about how women can't be trusted, how relationships always end badly, or how people always leave, he may be projecting his unresolved anger about his ex onto relationships as a whole. Watch for signs that he's still trying to make sense of why his previous relationship ended. If he frequently analyzes what went wrong, second-guesses decisions he made, or expresses confusion about why things didn't work out, he's still emotionally processing that relationship. A man who has moved on will have accepted the end of his previous relationship and learned from it without continuing to ruminate about it. Sometimes unresolved emotions manifest as idealization of the past relationship. He might talk about his ex or their relationship in unrealistically positive terms, describing it as perfect or amazing while glossing over the problems that led to their breakup. This type of idealization suggests that he hasn't fully processed the reality of why that relationship ended and may be comparing his current relationship to an unrealistic standard. Conversely, he might demonize his ex and their entire relationship, describing everything in extremely negative terms and expressing intense anger or bitterness whenever the topic comes up. While some negative feelings after a difficult breakup are normal, ongoing intense anger suggests that he's still very much emotionally invested in that relationship, even if the investment is negative. Pay attention to whether he seems to have learned appropriate lessons from his previous relationship. A man who has processed the end of a relationship in a healthy way will be able to identify patterns he wants to change, recognize his own contributions to problems, and apply those insights to building a better relationship with you. If he seems to have learned nothing from his past relationship, or if all the lessons he's learned are negative and defensive, he may not have done the emotional work necessary to move forward. Notice if he has difficulty being vulnerable or intimate with you in ways that seem connected to his past relationship. He might put up walls in areas where he was hurt before, or he might be hyper-vigilant about protecting himself from experiencing similar pain. While some caution after a difficult breakup is understandable, ongoing emotional guardedness that prevents genuine intimacy suggests unresolved trauma from his previous relationship. Sometimes unresolved emotions appear as anxiety or fear about your relationship. He might be constantly worried that you're going to leave him, or he might interpret normal relationship challenges as signs that your relationship is doomed. This type of anxiety often stems from unprocessed pain about his previous relationship, ending and fear of experiencing that loss again. Watch for signs that he's still hoping for closure or resolution from his ex. He might mention wanting to have one more conversation with her to clear the air, or express hope that they might be able to be friends someday. This desire for closure often indicates that he hasn't found peace with how that relationship ended and is still emotionally invested in resolving those feelings. Another indicator is if he seems to be using your relationship to prove something about himself or to heal wounds from his previous relationship. He might be overly focused on being different with you than he was with his ex, or seem to be trying to recreate positive aspects of his past relationship through your relationship. This suggests that he's not fully present with you as an individual, but is instead using your relationship as a vehicle for processing his past. The most concerning sign is if he expresses ongoing love for his ex, even if he claims it's not romantic love. He might say things like, "I'll always love her, but I'm not in love with her," or "She was a huge part of my life and I can't just turn off those feelings." While it's natural to have some fond feelings for people who were important to us, ongoing declarations of love for an ex suggest that he hasn't created appropriate emotional boundaries. A man who is emotionally available for a new relationship will have processed his previous relationship in a healthy way. He'll be able to acknowledge both the good and bad aspects of that relationship without being consumed by either grief or anger. He'll have learned from his experiences and be able to apply those lessons constructively to building something new with you. Most importantly, he'll be emotionally present and available to create new memories and experiences rather than being stuck in the past. As we wrap up our discussion of these 7 critical signs that he's still in love with his ex, I want you to take a moment to reflect honestly on your current situation. If you've recognized several of these patterns in your relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that all hope is lost, but it does mean that you need to have some serious conversations and make some important decisions about your future. Remember that as mature women, we have the wisdom and experience to recognize when we're not getting what we deserve in a relationship. We've lived through enough to know that love alone isn't sufficient for a healthy partnership. We need emotional availability, commitment, and the security of knowing that we're our partner's first choice, not their consolation prize or their way of getting over someone else. If you've identified these signs in your relationship, the first step is to have an honest conversation with your partner about your concerns. Choose a calm moment when you can speak without interruption and express your observations clearly and specifically. Don't let him dismiss your concerns as jealousy or insecurity. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve to have them acknowledged and addressed. Pay attention to how he responds to this conversation. A man who is genuinely committed to your relationship and capable of emotional growth will listen to your concerns, acknowledge the behaviors you've identified, and work with you to address them. He'll be willing to make changes to help you feel more secure and to demonstrate his commitment to moving forward together. However, if he becomes defensive, dismissive, or refuses to acknowledge the validity of your concerns, that tells you everything you need to know about his priorities. You cannot force someone to get over their ex, and you cannot compete with a ghost. If he's not willing to do the emotional work necessary to be fully present in your relationship, then you need to decide whether you're willing to accept a partial relationship. Remember that you have the power to choose what you will and won't accept in your relationships. You don't have to settle for being someone's second choice or emotional placeholder. You don't have to compete with memories of someone else or wait for someone to finish processing their past relationship. You deserve to be with someone who is excited about building a future with you, not someone who is still emotionally tethered to their past. If you decide that you can't continue in a relationship where your partner isn't fully available, know that leaving doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've recognized your worth and chosen to honor it. It takes courage to walk away from someone you care about, but sometimes that's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. On the other hand, if your partner demonstrates genuine awareness of these issues and commits to working on them, there may be hope for your relationship. But this work needs to be ongoing and measurable. You should see consistent changes in his behavior, not just promises or temporary improvements that backslide over time. Set clear boundaries about what you need to feel secure in the relationship. This might include limiting contact with his ex to only what's absolutely necessary, removing photos and mementos from his living space, attending couples counseling together, or other specific changes that address the issues you've identified. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need, and don't accept partial measures or temporary changes. Throughout this process, prioritize your own emotional well-being. Don't lose yourself trying to win a competition with someone who isn't even present. Don't change who you are to try to measure up to an idealized version of his ex. You are enough, exactly as you are, and the right person will see and appreciate that without needing to compare you to anyone else. Trust your instincts. As women with life experience, we often know when something isn't right, even if we can't immediately put our finger on what it is. If you feel like you're competing with someone from his past, if you feel like part of his heart is elsewhere, if you feel like you're not getting his full attention and commitment, those feelings are telling you something important. Don't dismiss them as insecurity or jealousy. Listen to what your intuition is telling you. Finally, remember that the goal isn't to punish men for having past relationships or to expect that they'll have no feelings about their exes. The goal is to ensure that you're in a relationship with someone who is emotionally available and committed to building something real with you. You want to be with someone who sees you as the most important woman in his life, not someone who is still emotionally entangled with someone from his past. Before you go, I want to remind you to take action on this video if it's been helpful to you. Please hit that like button to help us reach more women who need to hear this message. Your engagement helps the algorithm show this content to others who might be struggling with similar situations. Subscribe to our channel for more relationship advice and empowerment content, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. If this video has provided you with valuable insights that have helped you gain clarity about your relationship situation, please consider supporting our channel with super thanks. Your support helps us continue creating content that makes a real difference in women's lives and helps us reach even more people who need these messages. Most importantly, share this video with friends who might benefit from this information. Sometimes we all need that outside perspective to help us see situations clearly, and you might be helping a friend recognize patterns that she hasn't been able to see on her own. Remember, you deserve to be loved completely, chosen fully, and valued for exactly who you are. Don't settle for anything less than a partner who is emotionally available and committed to building a beautiful future with you. You are worth that, and the right person will see it without hesitation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring how to create the healthy, fulfilling relationships we all deserve. Until then, remember your worth, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to choose yourself. Take care, and remember that you have the power to create the love story you truly want. Don't let anyone convince you to accept less than you deserve. You are worthy of a love that is present, committed, and fully yours.